You have probably heard by now that two EMTs from the town of Catskill, New York ambulance service have recently resigned after a shocking video surfaced captured by a doorbell camera of all things. The footage reveals an ambulance patient struggling and ultimately falling while attempting to climb into the ambulance, receiving little to no assistance from the EMTs on duty. Hello, everyone. He's Paul Gerard. I am Kevin Kelly. We are Gerard & Associates Incorporated, your national EMS CQI consulting firm. Check out the website at www.gerardassociates.com. You're listening to the G&A Way EMS CQI podcast. Of course, you know that we're on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the others. We are grateful that you've tuned in. Today, we're talking about documenting the undocumentable and how a small town EMS chief is turning customer service lemons into a nice, hard lemonade. Paul, you've seen the video. You've read the story, and you yourself are a national EMS CQI savant. Some might say a run report whisperer. Let's go to the videotape.
Regaining the public's trust, that is the priority for Catskill leaders after this disturbing video of two EMTs mocking and mistreating a patient. Tonight, only on 13, EMS and town leaders speak with Stella Porter. Stella's here in the studio right now. Good evening to you, Stella. What actions are they taking now?
Hi, Sabrina. The chief of EMS, George June, is a veteran of the job. He tells me he understands people's visceral reaction to that video. He wants to earn the public's confidence back.
The video made me sad.
It was taken last Friday. Tom Wygant, the patient seen here in green, and his wife Rose called 911 when his blood sugar was high. Instead of help, he was met with this.
You need to get up.
Tom was admitted to the hospital for several days. We sat down with Catskills Chief of EMS, George June, and Town Supervisor Patrick McCullough just after they visited and apologized to Tom.
Why was it important to you to own that?
It's my face that leads the organization. It's my reputation. So I'm going to do what we need to do to rebuild that trust and to make sure that something like this never happens again.
When you look at what happened, some people might say it indicates a bigger issue with the culture. Do you think that's the case at all?
I don't think it's, like I said, I don't think it's endemic of our organization as a whole. There are challenges that the EMS system faces. EMS is absolutely in crisis in New York State.
We've reported on the difficulties with staffing, burnout, and wait times, all factors June says weigh on his 45 employees. Then add this video.
They're crestfallen as well. They're devastated, and they know that, there's been irreparable harm done to our reputation, but we also know that we have to work hard to regain the public's trust, and we are committed to that.
Right now, that means looking into state funding for body cameras, additional training, trying to better identify employee burnout, and making it easier to report complaints on the department's website.
Transparency has always been a key factor for me. If something's going on within the town, the community needs to know exactly what the town board and our employees are doing to address that issue.
And June himself notified the State Department of Health about that video. The agency opened an investigation. We are not naming those two former employees. They're not charged with a crime.
Okay. Paul, after seeing this now for a second time, a third time, I got a question for you. Can the conventional EMS CQI process pick up on clues that will help identify EMS providers at risk for this type of seemingly apathetic behavior toward ambulance patients? By the way, I want to say you look great today.
Oh, thanks. I got a new webcam, so it makes you look much more devastatingly handsome than I normally do.
20 years younger.
20 years, yeah. See, it was worth it. I should have bought this thing 20 years ago. I
would agree.
So I'm going to answer your question like a lawyer. Even though I'm not a lawyer, I'm going to play one right now, and I'm going to say the answer is maybe. So where's my $500?
Well,
and you and I have talked about this in previous podcasts, is that this stuff generally doesn't happen in a vacuum. And when you're seeing this sort of behavior, there's usually a pattern here. And so the pattern is what your CQI process can normally pick up. These types of individuals have low empathy for the patient. Clearly, they're not doing their job in any way, shape, or form. They didn't bring their equipment to the side of the patient. They didn't even go to the patient. They made the patient come to them. They allowed the patient to get into the ambulance without doing a proper lift or carry. They did nothing in terms of assessment. So there's just so much wrong with this call. So they would either have to lie prolifically on their run report to get that past the CQI process, or what normally happens is they're fairly accurate in their documentation of the incident, and CQI should be all over it. So, the question I have is, how come somebody hasn't been all over these two prior to this occurring? Because more than likely, it's not a one-time event.
So a problem within the CQI process itself, in that there is no identifiable mechanism for picking up on these clues. And with G&A, it's not just a paperwork review process. You sit down with these folks. We do one-on-ones.
Yeah.
We're able to observe body language, nonverbal clues. We're able to ask questions about, something as simple as how is your day? And then that response tells you a treasure trove of information about what the organizational psychology at that time might be.
Yeah, that's right. We don't wait for sentinel events. We don't wait for, audit calls and we let things pass. And when it comes to something really big, oh, okay, I'm going to pull these guys in and talk now. We don't wait for that, because that's way past the point of catching and fixing problems. So you're reacting to problems that have already occurred. So we actually provide feedback on 100% of the calls that we review. So the auditors review the call, and we meet with the provider and go through every single call with them to discuss opportunities for improvement, regardless of how small those happen to be or how large they are. And what that does is it allows us a lot of time with the individual to get to know them, understand their mindset, understand where their head is at. And it's in having those discussions and those meetings where you can tell the folks who don't care. You can tell the folks who don't really want to be doing the job. And that's where you should be saying, all right, what else are we going to do with this individual if they're not going to play CQI with us?
Yeah. What is really interesting to me is that it seems on all of the big EMS media sites, EMS One, GEMS, we can't go but a day without some type of story about bad behavior of EMS providers that's on some type of camera. Now, back in our day when we didn't have the ubiquity of surveillance,
right,
that exists today.
Yeah.
So, it's not that we made a habit out of treating people horribly, because we didn't. That wasn't part of our repertoire. Mm-hmm. But if you were in the system back then and that was your attitude toward patients, and that's what evolved through your practice, you could get away with it. Mm-hmm. Can't get away with it today.
No.
Many more people are capturing everything. In fact, I think we talk about it almost on every show.
Oh, we do. We keep using the Ring doorbell scenario. But the reality is everybody's got a cell phone. There's a video camera on every telephone pole in front of every major business, in people's houses. You have to act as if you're always being recorded. Even if you're driving down the road with lights and sirens and you're going to the call, a traffic camera is going to get you eating your hot dog and laughing at jokes that you're telling to your partner on the way to the call. So you need to assume that whenever you're out in public, you're constantly being monitored, and act accordingly, act professionally. That's what the client, the customer expects of you, is to be professional. And you need to show what kind of professional you really are.
Yeah, it's the Truman Show. It's not the Truman Show anymore. It's the EMS show.
Yeah.
But the totality of surveillance, and it's not just people taking cool video of emergency vehicles with lights and sirens going by. That there are whackers that do that. In fact, you go on. You mentioned the lights and the sirens and hot dogs and all of that. You can go on YouTube, and there are YouTube channels just dedicated to watching emergency vehicles, fire trucks, ambulances, all of that. Just driving by with their lights and sirens on. I mean, that's a trend now. So, and people, put that up there, their influences, they use that video to generate advertising. And sometimes you see some untoward behavior when that ambulance drives by. For example, Paul, did you know that when you wave hello, that's supposed to be all 5 fingers, not just one? Did you know that? Yeah, that's it.
That's something you taught me, Kevin.
Yeah. So, driving by, flipping off the guy who's taking video of you is not going to help the reputation of your ambulance service. So, I mean, you're in the Truman Show. You're Jim Carrey. You may be, like Jim Carrey, an unwitting participant, but you're not an unwitting participant.
Right. Funny you should say that with the flipping thing, Kevin, because there was a case a few years back where the EMS crew was responding to a call, went by an intersection, and they flipped off the cop who was sitting on the side of the road that they know is a friend of his, and they were laughing, ha, 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 flip him off. Yeah. But bystanders saw that, didn't realize that was a buddy-bro relationship thing that was going on, as opposed to... the bromance thing, and they complained these guys were flipping off people on the way by. So that's actually happened in real life.
And we talk about it every day, but I make my living as a lawyer in large part based on evidence that I get from the government, from body cam footage, dash cameras on cruisers.
Right. You see it all the time.
Canvassing, they canvass a scene. That's the first thing they're looking for is who has some type of capturing device on their doorbell, and everybody's got them. In fact, you can sign up and you can alert police, fire, and EMS that you have a Ring doorbell. So if there's anything suspicious going on, they just swing by and take a copy of it.
Well, on this Catskill call, I read one article, and everything we've gotten, we don't have any inside information. Everything we've read has been in the media.
That's right.
So which are facts and which are not facts, it would still need to be resolved. But one article I read was that this was promulgated in part from a niece who was watching the live stream of the ambulance action, saw what was going down, drove to the scene, and was challenging I guess one is an EMT, one is a paramedic. Was challenging the crew. So this is somebody who came to the scene to challenge this from watching a live stream of the Ring doorbell cam. So
that's amazing.
I mean, that was what the article said. So assuming it's true, right? Because it was in the news, it's on the internet, so it must be true. But that's, real-time activism, right? You're not treating my aunt and uncle well. I'm going to come down there and beam you. So, providers just have to be aware of this, be cognizant of it. But the problem, I think, Kevin, is that folks like those two with such a high degree of antipathy towards the patient, I suspect that they could listen to this podcast all day long, as can some other EMS providers who probably shouldn't be in the field, and they're just going to poo-poo it all. They don't really care. So I'm not sure we can impact those folks. Maybe we can, but I doubt it. So it's the ones that are impactful. If you're a little bit lackadaisical on what you say and the joking around. You see this on the news all the time too, right? Where you see a bunch of firefighters, police officers, and EMS guys on the scene of a call, and somebody said something and the guys start laughing, in the middle of the call, and it just looks bad, even if has nothing to do with the patient, nothing to do with the scene. It just doesn't look good. So act as if you're always on camera, because you probably are.
Yeah, no question about it. Again, it's the Truman Show, but it's everywhere. Mm-hmm. It's surveillance camera on street corners, business, you name it. And now I didn't read that story, but that's an incredible story, because now we're not just getting screwed on the scene; we're getting screwed remotely by unhappy customers and family members as well.
In real time. Yeah. The scene is stressful enough. Can you imagine? And we have problems with bystanders and family giving us a hard time on scenes all the time. But now if you're acting badly, you're just asking for folks to show up and give you shit. So you really have to be careful. And
don't forget about the teddy bear surveillance cams when you have the nanny come over to babysit. They capture stuff. So, the little teddy bear sitting above the fireplace when you come in to take care of the kid, that is an active video camera that is capturing what you are doing. Mm-hmm. The baby monitors, that's a great one. In fact, you can probably sit and listen to your neighbor's baby monitor with a police scanner. You used to be able to do that and eavesdrop on things that are going on. So there's a totality of ways that evidence of apathy, evidence of, well, frankly, poor organizational culture, customer service, and it all circles back to, I think, the CQI process, which has an ability to pick this stuff up, but doesn't. Yeah. That is all just a treasure trove of information that can be used by the state regulatory agency, right? Mm-hmm. New York EMS is investigating this incident. It sounds from the news stories that the EMTs have resigned. Mm-hmm. We don't have any additional information other than what is being reported. But the question is, how do we get to this? And when it happens, how do you document this call? What are you putting in your run report? What aren't you seeing in run reports that you've audited previous to this that would, sort of put the light on this kind of behavior?
Yeah, that's it. A lot of times bad actors don't put everything in the run report. They'll put a lot of the stuff in there that's negative to themselves, but they'll avoid putting in the things that they think are the most egregious, problematic things. So you're only seeing the tip of the iceberg on that run report in most cases. And it's highly unusual for them to be completely honest, so I told the patient to get up or else, kind of stuff. They usually don't put that sort of language in. But this is where the CQI guy has to act as a detective, right? So, and you know that these folks generally have bad reputations within the organization. You know that you hear rumblings of stuff. So you don't have to rely solely on the run report. If you know that these folks tend to do these sorts of things, make patients walk, a number of years back up here in Worcester, Mass, they used to have bumper stickers on the truck that said, no shoes, no service, or something like that, or some such, crazy. This is probably 25 years ago now, but
yeah, what was that?
What was it? There's no shoes, no service, no shoes, no train, no. I forgot what it was, the exact language of it.
Yeah, I remember.
Basically, they were brazen enough to put it on their bumper sticker. Put it on. So it can't be tolerated. And the problem is that this has probably been tolerated. Those two individuals, that's probably been going on. It damns all the hardworking members, the men and women of the Catskill EMS agency. It condemns all of them for, the public's going to view them now as being, uncaring individuals. And our stock in trade is the trust that the public has in us to call us in their hour of need, call us into their house, into their bedrooms, into their, most intimate of places when they have these issues. And they trust us to do well by them. And if we violate that, and based on the number of calls it was seeing like this, it was one in the article in the news today from EMS1 about Alabama, where they killed a guy on a routine transport. Patient started having chest pain. The EMT was intoxicated or otherwise inebriated. So the medic went and drove the truck and had the EMT in the back, and the EMT put his earbuds in and fell asleep. And the patient ended up having a massive MI and he ultimately died several days later out of the ICU. So this stuff's going on all over the place. It's frequent. And, but the difference now between, in the old days, the good old days, is that, everybody can see it happening in real time all the time because of the frequency of having things like Ring doorbell cams and body cameras from police officers. In fact, like one of those news articles, Catskill folks are considering getting body cameras for their EMTs and paramedics, and that's going to complicate life even more, right? Because now you're going to see and hear all sorts of stuff. So,
what do you think about the body cams?
I've got mixed emotions. On the one hand, from a CQI perspective, I love it because it means more data. I can see in real time what really happened. And I love that from a CQI perspective. From a practitioner's perspective, it worries me a little because, that things aren't always perfect. And, now there's going to be these recordings and evidence, and, you're going to have to be careful of every single thing you say every moment of every day. So it's, I think overall it's a good thing, but it's just going to require a change in mindset and a change in behaviors from practitioners, so that it's not used against them. If you remember back in the late 80s, early 90s, I think it was, when AEDs first came out, you and I have talked about this before. They had recorders on. We used to have these little cassette recorders that would record the whole call. Remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Part of my job, I was the director at Norwood Hospital at the time, and part of my job was to review all the BLS agencies in our service area, all their AED recordings for CQI, and provide feedback to them. And you would hear, wow, is that guy hung, and all sorts of wacky shit about cardiac arrest, where people were just kind of, disrespectful and not very pleasant.
Wait. Your review of my calls, I said some guy was well.
I didn't say your calls, but now that you bring it up, Kevin, there's something I want to talk to you about 30 years later.
I'm
I
sure.
want to talk to you about this call. But there was all sorts of inappropriate stuff that people were saying, and the AED companies actually stopped those recordings because of it. And I'm just afraid that, we might see some of that. And the reality is that shouldn't occur anyway, right? So I guess if you're a purist, you can say, hey, body cams for everyone, because you shouldn't be doing that at all in any way, shape, or form. But, anybody who's worked in EMS knows that, there's morbid humor and gallows humor that goes on in EMS and that sort of thing. And the general public would never understand that if they saw it on the evening news, I suppose. So it's a good way to help clean up our act in EMS. I think that's all good. But I think people have to be very careful.
Well, it's worked wonders for the police. I mean, there you
go. Right.
And I will say this. I will say, as far as some of that gallows humor, that public safety stuff, we're not seeing as much of that anymore compared to when we first started dealing with officers with body cam footage. So it is a behavior modification tool. But I got to tell you, I principally rely on body cam and dashboard camera footage to exonerate my clients. I do guns, drugs, and alcohol. Any OUI case, to the extent that the police department has dash cams and body cams, I get that evidence and I get to see. In fact, I got a case now. It's an OUI case where I'm going to use the body cam footage to make an argument that the Massachusetts State Police used excessive force, didn't have to do what they did to arrest my client, and it's clearly on the body cam.
So is this good for EMS providers to start? And that's state police and that's the cops. They've been doing it for years. Yeah. But for EMS providers, you're a defense attorney. You're also an advocate for patient care. You're also an advocate for EMS providers, right?
Well, I'm an advocate for privacy, too. Remember, I have a whole body of experience as a privacy lawyer.
So how do you think this... What's your opinion on EMS providers wearing body cams?
All for it. I'm all for it now. Yeah, all for it. I had a lot of trepidation for the same reasons that you had, that we have, because I'll say this, I would be a nightmare if I had to wear a body cam, because I got all kinds of impulse control issues from time to time. And it's part of the shtick, but the public who sees the shtick might not get that as Kelly being Kelly. And,
that's it. And that's on us, though. We've got to change that.
That's right. We got to change our behavior. That's part of being accountable and all of that.
Yeah.
But that's principally why I think the time has come. There are way too many, the ubiquity of surveillance technology capturing us doing, both good and bad things. But to increase accountability and transparency and holding, not just EMTs and paramedics, but public service workers in general accountable for their actions is a benefit in the long run to patient care. It might be a temporary privacy. We gotta, feel this way through. We can read this technology to redact. There's all kinds of things you can do to just tease out and edit and clip what you need for evidence so
does this solve all of Catskill EMS's problems?
No, absolutely not. This, frankly, is just a one sliver of, because don't know the totality of what the problems actually are.
Right.
We're not indicting. I mean, the video of the chief, the apology, the town manager, all of that, incredibly positive.
Yeah.
I think that's great. They're Davids. They're a small 45 member outfit.
Right.
Small town just south of Albany, New York, not too far away from me right now, actually. But they're Davids. I mean, can you imagine being the chief and me popping my head? Hey, Paul, no, this has happened, right? I've popped my head into your office and I've said, hey, you're not going to believe this one.
Yep. Yes, you have.
And then then I get the face and the red. And it's like, all right, give it to me. And here it is.
Right.
You want to see the video first, Paul? You want me to give you the story? Let me see the video first. And then, so, but that happens. Can you imagine having to deal with that?
Yeah.
And, number one, how did it, and again, it comes back to CQI, the data collection, not just the run report reviews, but the one-on-one coaching sessions.
You got to know your people, and you got to know their proclivities. You got to know which ones are likely to act out. And after a while, we get enough of a profile on the behaviors of individuals where we can actually predict which ones are going to get in these types of incidents, right? This type of trouble.
And that's it.
Preemptively, what do you do about that? You got to have these discussions with these providers earlier on in the process. You got to talk to them about the things that they do on everyday calls, like not bringing their equipment to the side of the patient, making people walk down flights of stairs, fix all that stuff before it becomes a problem. Yeah. And then you can hopefully avoid some of this stuff. And for those who don't have any empathy and any compassion for the patient, then you got to call them out on that too. You have to have the discussion and say, hey, we've had cases where paramedics, very good clinically, very intelligent individuals, but they do things that don't show a high degree of compassion. We had like putting 14 gauges in little old ladies in their wrists, type of stuff when they don't need it. Putting tubes down people who, without pre-medicating them properly first or waiting for that medication to start taking effect, and they didn't really care. They just wanted to get that tube and, jam it down there kind of thing. Yeah. Cardioverting patients without giving them medication first if it's appropriate, assuming that you can. So some of those things go to the comfort or a compassion thing. I wouldn't want to get zapped if I didn't have a little drugs on board first. So if you can do that, you should do that. Unless they're that unstable and that's, you just don't have time for it. But, you can start to see those types of trends in people when you see multiple calls. When we sit with a provider and do what we call trimester reviews, we review every call with them at that point. The urgent stuff we do immediately when they come up. But the non-urgent stuff, we go through all. So we'll sit with a provider and we'll go through 20, 30, 40, 50, 150 calls with that person and go through all the category 2s, all the category 1s. And that's where you see the trends, where you pick up a category 2 and say, hey, here's someone you should have pre-medicated before you did something. And here's another one. Hey, it's not in large bores on patients. The patient was writhing in pain, according to your report. Did you really need to start that 14 gauge in their neck or in their wrist rather? You have those discussions, and in the process, you're learning what paramedics or EMTs think about those topics. And that's where you can start to identify that they have or don't have the requisite amount of empathy that you would like them to have. So those discussions can be had long before there's an incident of this nature. I'm curious, Kevin, whether this is something that's been going on in Catskill widespread, if everybody does this sort of stuff so it's normal behavior, or if it's just, these two were problem people who were working together the same, today and, the bad forces came together for a given call. Yeah. It raises that question.
Right. Or are they exemplary employees that had a horrible day and they jumped into the system, the negative EMS aspects of the system with both feet? Now, it could be. I mean, guy could have, the dude who was trying to coach him up, you can do it. You can get there. Come on.
Oh, don't be like my 7-year-old listens better. That guy.
Give it, do one for the Gipper. You can do it.
Yeah,
all that stuff. Who knows? Maybe this morning he got up, went to take a shower, got back, and his wife was in bed with his brother.
Yeah, I'm going to be the Debbie Downer on this one because I don't think that's what's going on. I suspect from reading this stuff. There was also an article, I don't know if you read this, Kevin. There was an article that female EMT got in trouble for stealing a patient's cell phone at another ambulance service she works for previously. So she's got, and I guess I don't know if she was charged for it or whatnot, but
so there's smoke, there's fire, there's some
that's what I'm thinking.
Character traits. So this is not, this is likely not just a bad day and I'm really sorry, I'll never do it again.
Right.
Because we send these people in lieu of termination. What do? We send them the EAP. You go to a psychiatrist. You have a customer service psychology evaluation done.
Right.
And then, we reintegrate them back into the EMS agency.
Yeah.
I'm
sorry, go ahead. What was that?
Yeah, not this time. I mean, they either resigned in lieu of termination or they were forced. Yeah. But anyway, they are not working there. And I love the fact that both the chief and the town manager went to the patient's house and did the apology.
Yeah,
I think that is going to,
smart.
In droves, save potential risk and liability and, that type of thing should this manifest into some type of litigation.
Yeah. Another problem we're seeing, and this is everybody's having it, and there's a little bit of a reference to it in one of those articles. I think the chief was bringing this up, but you hear this from everybody else too, is that right now there is a scarcity of providers at any level and any level of quality. And so a lot of chiefs are hiring or retaining people that they normally wouldn't because it's going to put more strain on their service to lose more people. It's going to put more strain on the people who are still there. Yeah. And I personally talk to a lot of chiefs who say, hey, Paul, this guy normally wouldn't cut mustard, but I need to hire him and you need to fix him. You need to straighten him out because I don't have anybody else. I've got nobody. So I don't know if that's something that happened in Catskill. These two were allowed to stay on, and these sorts of behaviors were ongoing, perhaps, maybe not. Maybe this is a one of, and it's the first time either one of them ever acted badly. But again, I'm skeptical of that. But if they were retained, management is between a rock and a hard place on these issues because they need to run a service. They need bodies to do it. There's a lack of bodies in general, and the bodies that retain are stressed out. Post-COVID, the people are PTSD. There's all sorts of issues going on in the workforce. And again, we're not saying anything new that everybody who reads GEMS or EMS One or any of the other news feeds doesn't see routinely that provider mental states are at an all-time critical state, and agencies need to do stuff about it. So your agency needs to get involved early before this type of stuff hits the fan.
Yeah, it's true. Video footage of bad behavior and mental health issues seem to be coming up quite a bit in the mainstream EMS media.
Right.
What did I want to ask you? We were talking about body cams and change in behavior and its impact, the Truman Show, but being professional and the mandate that you have to now, you cannot go on autopilot.
Right.
What happens, you have it, whatever, whether you're a crappy employee or what. I mean, you have a bad day, but you're on camera 24/7.
Right.
And you now have to reinvent your thought process because that's the environment. You are in that Truman Show, and that's the environment that you're in. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I don't know how I'd be able to cope with it, although, we'd modify our behavior. But getting back to your point, the chief mentions in the article, the news mentions staffing, burnout, wait times. Add to that the stress of not getting off your shift on time and being held over. Right. Being held over, it's not just being held over for an hour or so to complete the call. I mean, back in our day, we were held over 24. We were held over sometimes for 24 hours.
Yeah, whole shifts and double shifts and triple shifts. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, it happens.
We are up all night. Right. We are not getting any sleep. You're sleep deprived. But the conventional, and I use the word conventional CQI process, Paul, because the conventional CQI process is really about retrospective, reading run reports, and after the fact come back and diagnosing the issues that led to the behavior.
Right.
And we can't have conventional EMS CQI anymore. No. We have to have a much more holistic process that involves these one-on-one coaching sessions.
Yeah.
And those EMS CQI folks, like our EMS CQI folks, have got to be on the lookout and trained for these clues that lead to apathy.
Yeah. And you need to be looking for root causes, right? When we have these discussions with individuals, we're not just trying to identify that they did something wrong and tell them to not do it again. We're really looking for, why did you choose to do it that way? Is it a knowledge deficit? Is it a protocol issue? Is it a equipment issue? Is it my partner was an asshole to me that day and we weren't getting along on the call issue? What is the issue? What is the real issue here? And then how do you fix that? So you've got to be much more proactive. That's why you can't be solely a data-driven CQI process where you're generating reams of reports and data off of your EPCR program. That doesn't help you with the psychology of what the provider was going through on that particular call, and then trying to help that person with that. And again, sitting and meeting with providers, they'll tell you if they trust you. They'll be telling you, I'm going through a divorce. I had a fight with my spouse. My dog bit my kid right before I came into work that day. They'll be honest with you and say, I know that shouldn't matter. I know that I should be able to put that stuff aside, but I'd be lying if I didn't say it was weighing on me. They're human beings. It's going to. So you've got to get to that level of trust where they tell you what really transpired to get them where they're going to be, and then work with them to figure out how to prevent that. And in a lot of cases, it revolves around, hey, maybe we should talk about getting you some EAP help. Maybe we should talk about, discussing this with, psychology professionals or something like that. So, we're always a little bit afraid to tread on that. But when you have that trust relationship, Kevin, and you're talking and the person's sitting there saying, here's my problems, and they just keep going on and on and on about all the challenges in their life. At some point, the empathetic part of you as a CQI coordinator has to be, hey, man, I know this is really not kind of any of my business. I'm concerned for you. Let's see if we can't get you some help. And that, will help you. It'll maybe get you off the road a little bit and give you a breather as you deal with this stuff. But if nothing else, it'll help you get back on the balance beam so that you're doing the right thing by people. Because that's, in the long run, much better for the psychology of your organization than just getting rid of people who have problems because they're not, towing the line. So these are all resources that we have to have at our disposal, and EMS CQI officers need to think about above and beyond the why didn't Kevin start an IV on that patient yesterday? Yeah. There's more to it.
Incredibly more to it. And EMS, I mean, it's not EMS per se, but now there's a whole subspecialty, an American Psychological Association or American Psychology Association subspecialty on fire service psychology.
Right.
What makes us tick, not only just as individuals, but what makes us tick as individuals impacts the entire organizational psychology of that particular shift, that particular platoon, that particular department.
Right.
And I can't wait to start seeing some of the research that's going to come out of this, because we're different people. EMS, police, fire, EMS, we're wired different. The motivations to join the profession are different than the motivations to become a stockbroker. Yep. There's a whole totality that we're going to have to start to understand. And, again, that's why EMS CQI and that CQI Pro is so important in being that detective to get that information on the table so we can take that valued employee and get the valued employee and coach that value employee up. Or we found out that, despite our best efforts, we hired the wrong fit for our organization. And now it's time to, we've done enough coaching up. We got to coach out. Maybe this guy would be better in some other type of organization. Right. But within our organizational psychology and our mission and in our vision, not a good fit. That's okay. It happens. But it's time to go someplace else. Go ahead. I was thinking about final thoughts before we wrap the sucker up.
Yeah, I think that's basically it. You're just going to be on. I think most CQI professionals don't consider their job to be a therapist. And in fact, we did a podcast in season 1, CQI, The Therapist Will See You Now. And we talked about this in some depth. But your job is more than just reading data and seeing if IV success rates are being done or people are getting their aspirin in a timely manner in the presence of a STEMI. You need to bring the empathy to it. You've got to consider people in a holistic, humanistic way that they need to be treated. This will help your organization in terms of provider burnout, lessening it if you have more of a tolerance for that. So don't consider yourself just a numbers cruncher. If you're the CQI guy, you are in a unique position to have interactions with the provider, to talk to them about calls where things didn't go great, to understand why they didn't go great, and to help to develop a plan of action for putting them down the right path for success. And that may include, hey, chief of service, had some talks with Kevin. He's really worrying me a little bit. Why don't we talk to him about offering him some additional support or help? That might need to come from the CQI guy. So everybody puts it off, right? Everybody kicks this can down the road. CQI folks think it's management's job to pay attention for that. Management thinks that, if they're a real problem, people will come and complain, and people don't come and complain very often. So nobody really wants to take the bull by the horns on that. But don't wait for an incident like in Catskill, New York to occur before you decide that you've got to take action to help your people be the best they can be.
All right, folks. Well, thanks very much for tuning in. Remember, the world's a stage and you are being recorded at all times. You gotta act the part. You gotta maintain the part, act professionally at all times. Embrace that culture of constant professionalism. For Paul Gerard, thanks for tuning in. Check us out at the website, www.gerardassociates.com. Again, go to Podbean, all kinds of podcast topics that we can keep you up to date on all of these EMS CQI topics. Again, really appreciate you tuning in. Peace out, everyone.
Stay safe, everyone.